Who's your emergency contact? Who should we notify in the case of death? Welcome to the USP, where I've spent the last 2+ decades of my life. I'm now in the SHU because of the incident that I shared with you in the prior episode. I was in the SHU for from December until about April before they shipped me out to Beaumont. And in the SHU, you're locked down practically 24/7. They call it 23-1. They're supposed to give you a rec 3 to 5 times a week, but there's always stuff going on the compound where it causes the yard to get locked down. Then if the yard's locked down, they don't got time to come and give you rec, or if somebody's bucking in the SHU, they don't come and get you. Whatever excuse they have not to give you rec, they're not going to give it to you. And if anybody's ever been in a confined space the size of a bathroom with another guy, I don't care how long you've been friends, how good of a friend you are. Eventually, you're gonna get on each other's nerves. So being in a cell for 5 months with my homeboy Kale, there's a few times that we almost got into it. And the situation might not even been anything serious to cause that, but you're just in a cell, you can't get away from each other. We as human beings, as people, sometimes we need a space to escape and to decompress. Just to be alone, just to be away from everything. But having someone in a cell with you all day, every day, is not a healthy environment. When I was in the Smooth down the road, now, later on, every morning, there was 2 buildings, we're in one building, it's 3 floors. We can look out our window and see the other building across the walk. And every morning, it's domestic violence. We say domestic violence is like celly on celly violence. Every morning you wake up and somebody's in a fight in the cell. Me and Easy E from Glendale, every morning we wake up and we count, of all the shit going on. Oh, over there on the 3rd floor, the 5 windows from the right. Oh, on the 2nd floor, 3 windows from the left, so on and so forth. Every single morning, somebody's waking up fighting each other, or in the middle of the night, or whatever, and there's no place to escape. So I don't understand how they can justify locking us in a cell all day, every day with another individual. Obama tried to change that, saying, solitary confinement should be reserved to one person. Well, when I was in Florence, they kicked our unit out and changed it into an honor unit where everybody has individual cells and other privileges that the rest of the yards don't have. Well, it only lasted 2 months. When they kicked somebody out, when they kicked all of us out and made that whole unit single cells, 2 people killed themselves in the cell. One of them was my friend Rick Turner. He was a first-time offender smoking meth. He has his own tragic story that he went through that led him up to a prison, but he was from a well-to-do family. And some certain things that transpired in his life caused him to go down a downward spiral. He started out here in Utah, ended up in Virginia. He was Paul Manafort's cellie, one of Trump's buddies. They had him in the cell with them. And the prosecutor knew that he wasn't what they were trying to claim. I mean, if you met this guy, Rick Turner, you know that he was a genuine guy, a nice guy. He was no leader of no blood gang, nicknamed Mick Jagger, which the prosecutor put him at. But I was in the unit with him, and he was telling me his case, and he said they didn't want to know about the truth about what was going on with him. Every time he went to court, they would put 3 papers in front of him with statements, wanting him to sign it, and the statements would say that Paul Manafort confided in him about this or about that. But he's a person of integrity, Rick. So he's like, I'm not gonna sign these and lie on this guy. The guy's never told me anything about what's going on with him and Trump. So every time Rick went to court, the prosecutor would present these papers in front of him, and they were telling him, hey, sign this, you can go home. Sign one of these, and you can go home. But he refused. He went to trial because all he was just a smoker. But at trial, they described him as some leader of some blood gang, nicknamed Mick Jagger, out here running dope, running guns. They brought 2 people, professional CIs. CIs are confidential informants. 2 professional CIs stating that they bought guns and dope from him at this time or another. So he lost his trial. But losing his trial, he still figured that he was going to go to a camp. He's a first-time offender, nonviolent offender. You know, he was just smoking dope. When they kicked in the house, he was downstairs smoking meth while the cops are upstairs raiding. He's so green to the game, he came upstairs and like, hey, what's going on? They didn't even know he was in the house. He could have slipped out the back door or whatnot, but he didn't feel like he did anything to get himself in big trouble. And he didn't even know. He just went upstairs, ended up getting arrested and indicted. But when he goes to Florence, he thought he was going to be at FCI, but they pulled him up to the USP. And during the 6 months that he was there, he was traumatized by the violence he seen. Like one day when he was coming back from rec, a guy got stabbed in my unit. He's laying in the sally port between the door, you got a sally port, whatever, I don't know how to describe a sally port. You got the door that goes in the unit, and you got another section where you wait for them to open the slider. Right there in that between, a dude just got stabbed up. A dude named Toker out of Ogden 13. The Norteños hit him and fucked him all the way off. And he's laying there in a pool of blood. And when Rick came back from rec, he had to walk over the body to get into the unit. And, he grew up sheltered. He's from what we call a trust fund baby. He was, I guess, for a lack of a better term, white privilege. So he was never really exposed to this environment. I mean, his job on the street, he was a psychologist, a counselor at a psych ward. So when he came and saw that, and amongst other things that he were exposed to, and then facing the fact that he had to do 40 years, he couldn't deal with it. Then he come to find out when we were reading his transcript to file for his appeal that the CI that they brought to testify against him, saying that they had bought guns and dope from him at the time they were supposed to have met him and done these things, these informants were locked up in another facility. And then digging into further, we find out that the DA, the prosecutor, was putting money on these guys' books and paying these guys' mama's bill. I just say these things to give you an example that these prosecutors, they're not people with integrity. They're not honest individuals like they try to portray to the public. These are pieces of shit that are trying to further their career by any means. They don't really care about the truth. They just want convictions. And then his punk ass public defender filed a motion to dismiss his appeal. Once you lose trial, your appeal is the only get back you got. That's the only way you can fight and get back to court and remedy some of the atrocities that they did to you. So the accumulation of all this stuff just made my friend lose hope. And he ended up hanging himself. It doesn't matter how like, it's hard for me to express to you the psychological effect that this environment has on you. And I'm not saying there's people that's built for it, but some of us are better prepared to deal with the environment because we grew up living a certain lifestyle. But some people get caught up in the system and don't have a clue. And when they go, they get a cultural shock. Just like people coming out of prison, been in prison decades and decades of their lives, and coming out and trying to insert themselves back into the world, get an overload on their senses. It's the same thing from people that's been used to a certain privilege, certain lifestyle, and now they're in a box. But not just in a box, they're in a box surrounded by predators and chaos. You know, he wrote a letter to his sister saying goodbye and all this. He couldn't deal with it. He couldn't fathom seeing himself doing 40 freaking years. He was already 40 something years old, never been locked up, never been in trouble. And now, you know, when you're at 40, getting a 40-year sentence is a death sentence. Because how many of us make it to 80, right? So anyway, he killed himself, and another dude named Mancha from TS, Texas Syndicate, he hung himself too. For whatever reason he did it, you know, those are his own personal issues. But when those two people hung themselves, they said, oh, no more single cells. But for us that's been doing time, we prefer to have a single cell. Because somebody's going to kill themselves. They're going to do it regardless if they're with a roommate, a cellie, or by themselves. They're going to find, if they're not trying to do that time, there's nothing that the staff is going to able to do to prevent them from doing it. For your viewers that's viewing this episode, put yourself in a box and imagine sitting there for 40 years. I'm sure a lot of us would take the same route as Rick did and others individuals that has done it through the course of my bid. Because being in a cell for day in and day out, that shit wears down on you, you know? And every time I've been to the SHU, I'm doing 5, 6 months, 2 years. But, you know, what got me through that is nothing special. It was just, but I'm of the mentality that I wasn't going to let this facility, this situation break me. And through the grace of God and my families and friends, I've been able to keep most of my sanity. I say most because I'm sure that, you know, when I'm interacting in the world with other people, that sometimes, you know, my PTSD or whatever psychological problem kicks in. But, you know, the point of this episode is me transitioning from Victorville to Beaumont. But I stayed in the SHU for 5 months. Then I went to Beaumont. You know, what also helped me during this time was, this is when I first met my wife, when she first started writing me, getting to know her. So being able to have somebody write you, send you books while you're in the SHU, send you newspapers, magazines, and stuff like that, that helps. But a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people are just stuck in there with their thoughts, stuck in there with their anger, stuck in there with their animosity and their hatred, and it just festers. Because there's no release valve. So they tell me I'm going to bloody Beaumont. I've been accustomed to being on the West Coast, and I know everybody on the West Coast. But now I'm getting sent to another penitentiary, in Texas, where I don't know who's there, what's there. So every time you go to another yard, no matter how long you've done time, you still get all the apprehension and nervousness because you don't know what's awaiting you. Every yard is different. When we get to Beaumont, we're in the, R&D, receiving and discharge, going through the evaluation, the SIS meeting, the captain's review, and all that. But while we're waiting, the deuces go off. On the yard, the Texas inmate had a softball game with some white boy. And this was told to me by Richie. He's a Texas inmate. We were in the same unit in Florence. And he was relaying the story about what happened at that time. They were playing baseball, and one of the white boys didn't like Richie was talking shit or something about, their play or whatever, and one of the white boys said, "Oh man, that's some bitch ass shit." You can't, I stress to people that in the penitentiary, there's certain words you can never use. Bitch, punk, lame, whatever. When you call somebody outside their name, especially if this individual is a gangster, part of an organization, they can never allow those things to be said, to go without being dealt with, because their homeboys, their own people, is not going to allow them to swallow it, because they don't want other people thinking they can talk to their homies any type of way. So when this individual white boy, this particular white boy, got back up to bat, Richie already told his homeboy, "Hey, when this motherfucker come around the base, I'm gonna get him." So all of his homeboy already on point, while the white boys didn't have a clue, because this dude just said it under his breath to Richie, thinking, I don't know what he was thinking, tough or whatever. So when he came around the third base, Richie hit him with a bat. And after that, all the Texas MA started stabbing up the white boys and chasing them on the softball field and whatnot. And the deuces went off and the place got locked down. So while I'm in R&D, we get there about 6 o'clock, but we don't get to go on the compound till 12:30 at night. So finally, when they take us to the yard at 12:30 at night, they try to put me in a TS cell in DA on the second floor. But it's in the middle of the night. You're waking up somebody in the middle of the night to put a cellie in. That's the worst time, because now you're locked in the cell with somebody that you don't know. And a lot of people don't want to take cellies in the middle of the night. But I had long wavy hair. So the TS dude, he told me later that he thought I was black. And Mexicans don't cellie up with blacks. Whites don't cellie up with blacks. Asians, we try to stay within our own Asian Islander community, but we cellie up with natives, we cellie up with Mexicans, and I've had white cellies, I've had black cellies. For me, I'm on man time. If you're not a piece of shit, if you're not a fucking rat, if you're not a sex offender, and you're a convict, and I know you, I'm not gonna have any issue with selling up with you, and nobody else can say anything to me about it, So, but anyway, they moved me out of that because the TS dude wouldn't accept me as his cellie, took me down to CA, which is downstairs, and put me in a cell by myself, which I preferred anyway. But we were locked down for 2 weeks before I could even walk around. And after the 2 week, when they started letting us out slowly, because every time you get locked down, they let you out to integrate you back to a regular program. They'll let you out a couple hours. Then the next day, they'll let you out half a day. Then the next day, they might let you get yard or whatever. But when they let us out for them after them 2 weeks, all the white boys on the softball field that ran, that didn't jump in and fight, even though it had nothing to do with them, even though they weren't the one that disrespected Richie and his homeboy. It's mandatory that if your car, your race gets into it, that you jump in. If you don't jump in and you don't do anything, when the smoke clears, they're gonna get you. Your own people's gonna get you. So when we come out for the first time, so we start coming out of the unit, all the white boys that was on the compound on the softball field that didn't jump, they all started getting stabbed. We went back on lockdown. They let us back out. Some other ones that didn't get it yet, they didn't have a chance to get stabbed yet for running, they got stabbed up and got run up too. This is my first week in bloody Beaumont. When I got there, I called my attorney, friend of mine, Deirdre, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, they sent you to bloody Beaumont? Tell me, is it as crazy as they say it is?" Because I guess all the attorneys out here in Utah, that's all they hear about is bloody Beaumont, and all the crazy shit that goes there. You know, for me, it's just another penitentiary. It's chaotic, just like every other shit. But through the course of my time being in Beaumont, I discovered that, yeah, all the penitentiary is crazy and violent, but for some reason, Beaumont was just a little bit more extreme. It was on a different level. But that's because when you enter an environment, a penitentiary, where if it's mellow, you conform. You're cool. You adopt the attitude. You adopt the personality of the penitentiary. But when you go to a place like bloody Beaumont and everything is chaos and everybody got knives, well, you have to adapt too. Because if everybody's violent and you're not, you're setting yourself up. And we're here now in bloody Beaumont, and the stuff that I have to share with you, the stuff that I've seen for myself, it's crazy. So I hope you're prepared for it. Sorry for this just to be a little teaser, but next episode, we're in bloody Beaumont from 2006 to 2008, before the place got so crazy and got shut down. Thank you guys for tuning in to Welcome to the USP. Again, subscribe, like, share, leave a comment on there. All right.